We're expecting a bit of life, and we're going to make sure that this session is exciting. But it's good to have you all here, and we're going to be talking about the youth and the digital economy. So when we're boosting an industrious young Africa, we can't quite do that without having serious and strong conversations about the digital economy. So let's get engaged and let's get excited. Are we excited? I love that, thank you. Now, without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call upon our esteemed panelists. So it's going to be an exciting discussion. You're going to see by the nature of the panelists that we have. These are people with a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, and who are doing great and amazing things on the African continent. So please allow me first to introduce our first panelist, who is Mr. Alex Ntale, who is the CEO of the ICT Chamber here in Rwanda. He speaks for the private sector, and he does a great many things. Alex, you can take this second. Yeah? Thank you for that. And then I'm going to call upon our second moderator, who is Elizabeth Tanya Masiwa, who is the director for Cassava Smart Tech. A round of applause, please. Our third moderator, I think, is a man who needs no introduction. I'm going to call upon the Director General of Smart Africa, Mr. Lassina Kone. And then I'm especially pleased to call upon our fourth moderator, who is a man until today I'd only read about in the press. I'm going to call upon an inspired entrepreneur who was one of the first to start building a tablet in Africa in 2011. In 2012, he started building a smartphone. So that's new piring technology. Please help me to welcome the founder of VMK, Mr. Veron Monku. All right, okay, good afternoon to you all, to all the panelists. And what we're going to start with is we're just going to start with a small video that's going to give you an insight into a lot of what we're going to be talking about. And this small video is related to one of our panelists, Elizabeth here, with Cassava Smart Tech. So if we can run the video, please.
Sasai, all in one, Sasai, all in one, Sasai. Pay or receive your money anytime, pay all your bills anytime, Connect with the world with Sasai. All in one, you can chat with your fam and your friends. But one G, a body, a go. This for Africa by Africa. All you need is Sasai. In Africa, Sasai. You can pay your bills, play your music, play your games. All in one with Sasai. In Africa, Sasai. You can pay your bills, play your music, chat with your friends. Pay or receive your money anytime, pay all your bills anytime, Connect with the world with Sasai. All in one, you can chat with your fam and your friends. But one G, a body, a go. This for Africa by Africa. All you need is Sasai. In Africa, Sasai. You can pay your bills, play your music, play your games, all in one with Sasai. In Africa, Sasai. You can pay your bills, play your music, chat with your friends. Sasai.
Okay, that's a great video, Sasai. Now, just to start, Elizabeth, I can throw this to you. Can you just tell us just a little bit about Sasai? Just so, you know, the audience can get an introduction into what they've just seen. I think, just check if it's...
Thank
you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's always amazing and incredible to be in a room with young people. And I know during the conference, we've been discussing a lot of the challenges that we all face, and we do face a lot of challenges. But I think that as an African young person, there is no better time to be young and African. We have such a huge opportunity to innovate for our continent. And I'm extremely excited about Sasai. A lot of these companies, Facebook, Twitter, when they create their applications, they don't have us in mind. I'll tell you, I've been to Facebook many times, and we have the largest and fastest growing population in the world, and yet we're not on the agenda when they think about how they innovate. And we shouldn't really expect to be, because we're African. And so Sasai is this new product that we have created at Cassava Smart Tech, and it is there to connect all of us as young Africans. I mean, we're all here in Kigali. How many of you came from outside of Rwanda? So there are a few of us, right? Yes? Excellent. So how many of you know how they can get a pizza delivered today to their hotel or wherever they're staying? So we see a show of hands. I only see one. But if I land in New York today, how many options do I know? I know I have Yelp, Facebook review, but we don't have anything for Africa. So Sasai is a platform that is going to connect each and every one of us, whatever country you're in. We're not saying leave the platform you're using. We're saying whatever platforms are out there are now in one marketplace. So I would encourage all of you to take out your smartphones and download Sasai. But I think the main thing is that we have to innovate for Africa by Africans. And I think this conference should inspire all of us to seek what opportunities there are for young people to see how we as Africans can leapfrog and get to the next level.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I think today we're talking, a round of applause, please. I think today we're talking about, just like she said, African solutions by Africa, for Africa. And as we talk about the digital economy, we realize that it's a growing part of our economy, and it's one thing that Africa is relying on to include young people, us young people, into economic activity. It's what we're expecting to help Africa to scale and to grow. Statistics tell us that for every 10% in terms of digital adoption, we get an expected 1.5% growth in terms of GDP. And that's amazing. And also becomes an amazing contribution that young people can make to African economies. So I'm going to throw this question to Mr. Kone, because where you sit at the head of Smart Africa, you've got a global view of the African continent. Where do you think Africa is at the moment in terms of the digital economy?
Thank you very much for having me. First of all, thank you all for attending, for coming to this Youth Connected conference. Smart Africa, as you may or you may not know, it's a Pan-African organization made of 29 countries with over 750 million population. Started in 2013. The main goal, the main vision of Smart Africa is to transform Africa into a single digital market. And why single digital market? I'm going to ask a question in the audience here. How many of you watch the local news on the TV at 8 o'clock, at 10 o'clock? Raise your hand. How many of you watch or look for information that you get from the social media on a daily basis? Raise your hand. You see, it basically means the way that the governments are communicating to the youth may not be the right way. The youth people will not sit in front of the TV to wait for the local news. It means we are in the digital age. Having said that, with the 1.2 billion populations in Africa, it has the potential of creating a billionaire every day. Why? Because every single youth in Africa, which is from 0 all the way to 35, is about 800 million out of 1.2 billion we can create. If everyone comes out with an application, sell it for $1, we have how many billionaires in Africa? As Sasai, as my colleague said it earlier on, we were not taken into account. How many of you in the morning when you wake up, the first thing in the morning, you look at your cell phone, you look at your WhatsApp, raise your hand.
That's all of us.
How many of you in the morning when you wake up, you look at your Facebook account or Instagram to say who contacted you, raise your hand. Okay. Has it ever occurred to you where this data is stored? It's not in Africa. The main goal for Smart Africa, Africa Voice and Africa Data, should stay in Africa.
That's powerful, DG.
And I will tell you why. I was very happy when His Excellency President Kagame, who is the chairman of Smart Africa, he said, I believe it was yesterday, was the day before yesterday, and people were saying, oh yes, our grandfathers, they fought the colony liberalization, and we are young generations. It's good. But there's nothing worse than the digital colonization. You are all being colonized because you don't even know where your data is being taken to and where your data is being packaged and sent back to Africa. Because if the colonization was based on the natural resources is finite. If the country is rich of gold, gold has an end. Diamond has an end. Information is finite. Data point becomes information. Information becomes knowledge. Knowledge becomes wisdom. That is the new oil today. And we are being, in Africa here, we are being taken for granted. All these data collection, data point you leave behind you, they are being reprocessed and sent it back to you for marketing purposes. That's why the awareness and the role of young people is important. That's why the role of Smart Africa is important. We work in the paradigm of looking at the business, looking at the policy environment, infrastructure, smart services. In the middle, if you know our theme, we said connect, innovate in order to transform. We've all been thinking that, oh, Africa will leapfrog. Yes. Two great things God has created in this life. The first one is we all have an equal brain. We all have a manpower to think in the world. The second thing God has created unequally, which is Africa is the youngest continent in the world. However, this can only be an advantage if we take care of our youth. If the youth are not educated, young people who were trapped by the digital gap, they need to go to vocational training to get savvy. I was reading a report which said 75% of 2030 jobs has not been created yet. And we have a biggest advantage. Not only we are young, there is no legacy. It means we do not have to copy what is happening in the Western world. We can do it from scratch. The evidence are here. The mobile money in Africa. We are today giving lessons to the more equipped world and the mobile money. Because we don't know, among you here, some of you have only known internet access through a mobile phone. Among you here, some of you have known bank account through mobile money. We went to school, we had the cathode ray tube, the big computers, mainframe, talking about a Fortran, Pascal. You guys don't know that. You know Java only. That is a big advantage. I will stop here, we'll continue the conversation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kone. So I think to pick up from there, one insightful thing for all of us is, look, we have potential billionaires sitting among us, and I'm hoping a number of you can tap into that, most definitely. But also to keep an eye out for digital colonization, because we are farming out our data all over the place. Now, we've got a number of young people here, and Veron, I'm going to throw this one to you, because apart from the innovations that you've done, you also work in a hub with young people. Now, if we're sitting here as young people and we're saying, look, I want to be a part of this digital economy, what sort of industries are we talking about? What can these young people really do to be a part of this digital economy? Veron?
Please excuse me, but I will speak in French, so voilà. Quand on entend le doyen parler, on se rend compte en effet que l'une des plus grandes richesses que nous avons, c'est notre jeunesse. Cette jeunesse, elle est dynamique. Et ce dynamisme a permis à l'économie numérique d'atteindre des proportions insoupçonnées parce que cette jeunesse a cette capacité de consommer les données comme jamais on ne l'avait espéré. La question sur cette africanisation de l'économie numérique, permettez-moi de rebondir dessus, elle est importante parce que, vous savez, moi je pense que seul un Africain peut savoir ce qu'un autre Africain a besoin. Mais la question qu'on doit se poser, elle est légitime sur le fait que qui contrôle nos données en Afrique. Mais nos données transitent par quoi? Elles transitent par des terminaux. Et ces terminaux, qui les conçoit? Ce ne sont pas les Africains. Vous voyez, en Amérique, le leader sur le marché, en Occident en tout cas, le leader sur le marché des devices est une entreprise occidentale. En Orient, le leader sur le marché oriental est une entreprise orientale. Pour l'Amérique, pour l'Occident, on a Apple, pour l'Orient, on a Samsung. Mais le leader sur le marché africain n'est pas africain. Et quand on va dans une logique se dire que seul un Africain sait ce que l'autre Africain a besoin, c'est-à-dire que nous nous sommes écartés nous-mêmes d'un secteur qui est devenu au fait un secteur central dans l'économie de nos pays. Vous imaginez, c'est comme un État qui décide que, par exemple, de rassembler les impôts de son pays, mais plutôt que de les mettre les impôts de son pays dans une banque de chez elle, elle va le mettre dans une banque ailleurs. C'est ce que nous faisons. Il est temps, je pense, de promouvoir le Made in Africa. Mais le Made in Africa, on ne peut le promouvoir que si avant ou après cela, il y a le Consume in Africa. Et c'est le plus dur parce que, vous voyez, des entreprises comme Apple ou Samsung ont réussi parce que dans leurs environnements, les gens les ont poussés, les ont accompagnés, les ont soutenus. Mais en Afrique, généralement, vous avez ici des jeunes, quand ils se lancent même dans leur propre projet de start-up, le premier obstacle qu'ils ont, ce n'est pas le fait qu'ils soient africains, mais c'est le fait que leur marché est africain, parce que l'Africain a du mal à faire confiance à d'autres produits africains. Moi, je pense qu'il est temps de promouvoir le Made in Africa. Mais promouvoir le Made in Africa, ce n'est pas juste parce que quelqu'un a fait un produit que je vais aller acheter. Mais si ce produit ne vous correspond pas, vous allez l'acheter pour le mettre quelque part. À chaque fois qu'on vous dira, est-ce que vous avez un truc africain? Ah si, j'en ai, mais vous ne l'utilisez pas. C'est juste un trésor. Ce qu'on a besoin de faire, c'est de faire nos produits différemment. Vous savez, ce qui a toujours marché dans la différence, c'est l'innovation. Dès lors que nous reconnaissons que nous pouvons faire différemment, nous commençons à innover. Et c'est de l'innovation que l'Afrique a besoin. L'innovation sur le secteur de la finance, l'Afrique l'a montré au monde avec le mobile banking. Nous l'avons pratiquement innové. Et les innovations, il y en a encore beaucoup. Vous voyez, aujourd'hui, le mobile banking a été conçu à côté, à quelques kilomètres ici au Kenya. Et aujourd'hui, toute l'Afrique, mais sinon partout dans le monde, on utilise le mobile banking. Vous pensez que ce que l'Afrique a à offrir au monde, ce n'est que le mobile banking? Moi, je dis non. Il y a des innovations partout. Nous sommes un continent de 1,2 milliard d'habitants, avec une grande majorité de jeunes. Moi, j'ai toujours dit qu'une entreprise, c'est d'abord une histoire. Une histoire, en Afrique, nous en avons partout. Nous avons des rêves. Et si on concrétisait ces rêves en entreprise, ça serait des entreprises qui pousseront des gens à avoir du Made in Africa, du Consume in Africa et du Promote Africa. Parce que l'Afrique, ce n'est pas qu'un trésor. L'Afrique, c'est pas qu'un trésor, un trophée qu'on doit afficher. L'Afrique, c'est une richesse qu'on doit consommer. Et la plus grande consommation devrait venir des Africains parce que jusqu'alors, nous ne consommons que ce qui vient de l'extérieur. Voilà.
Thank you for that, Veron. And I think you're right. Africa is wealth. We're not a trophy for anyone to win. We are the champions of our own destiny. And that's what we're charting forward. Now, Alex, I'm going to ask you this because, Alex, you do a lot of work with young people. You are basically the voice of ICT private sector here. You're also working on a space program. Yes, I said space, a space program. So here's a question in terms of the digital economy so we can inspire a lot of young people here. What's working? What is it in Africa right now from a digital economy perspective that's making sense and that's working that people can tap into?
Thank you very much, and thanks to the organizers for inviting me. There's a lot of things that are working, but maybe I can point to some of them that I see here in Rwanda. There's in digital, as far as digital education systems and platforms are concerned, we know there's a growing, the population, as I think it's been cited, about 700 million Africans are below the age of 30, and that is continuing to grow. And if you look at where the future is, that number has they grow into adulthood and give birth, education is one of those that is a kind of a utility function, has a utility function to it that is continuing to grow. So the startups that we've been working with are into the skill space, and we see them growing in terms of in terms of their businesses and revenues, how much they generate, but also in terms of the regions, the geographical coverage that they have. Mobility, just this week I posted a simple survey on Twitter as Safi Rides was being launched, I think it was 2 days ago. And just to check, is really Rwanda becoming a mobility hub? And 86% of the respondents said yes. And you look at companies like AC Group that started about 4 or 5 years ago, how much it has grown, how much impact they've had, not just on themselves, but also creating jobs, not only technology jobs, but also along the value chains, whether it's in the digital payments space. They have people that are doing integration. They have people that are doing some AI work for some of the verifications that they have to do. They have, of course, the agents, the agent network that is selling these, that is doing the top-ups. And that's just one company, but there's about 3 other companies that are in the not just 3 actually, maybe 4 or 5 companies, whether it's the motors, the taxis, but the buses, the city-to-city, intercity transportation, and transport is a utility, another utility. We have one of the least known, not really least known, but one of the not so known entrepreneurs that is in the water sector that is taking what we could call combinatorial technologies. So you have solar energy with mechanical engineering skills added to that, and drilling and distributing water. And that's another utility. And we all know energy is needed, water is needed. These are utilities that are continuously going to be needed on the market. So these are some of the areas that are playing a utility function, things people can't do without in most cases. And if asked, those are what I can touch on today. Of course, everybody loves fintech. Most of the people that you'll talk to today, if there is an entrepreneur, if you just do a random tech check, they'll tell you they're into fintech. But just this year, we've interfaced with some startups that started in the creative industries, audiovisual. And they got, since January, they ramped up about 20,000 subscribers.
Wow.
Okay, on their platform. Zatu TV, they were here in Transform Africa, they were pitching. And since Transform Africa, they've added 12,000 subscribers to their platform. And that, they have about 50 employees that are in the arts space, part-timers, of course, actors. There's also developers, obviously. There's content editors. There's all sorts of... so the digital economy sometimes is thought about in the terms of technology, but it covers value chains. So as that, just the Zatu TV that I've highlighted, you can see that it creates jobs for actors, it creates jobs for software developers, for app developers, it creates jobs for content, for videographers, for cinematographers, and the spectrum just keeps on, sound and so forth and so on. So the digital economy shouldn't just be thought of as an ICT, in an ICT, with ICT lenses only, but rather from a value chain angle.
Thank you very much, Alex. I think I'm going to pick up 3 things from there. Firstly, that you talked about digital payments, which Veron also talked about. So I think we'll tackle that a bit later. But before we go there, you also mentioned that the digital economy doesn't need to be just just the ICT space. It can be an enabler. And you talked about water, which is an energy enabler. So I'm hoping this gives hope and ideas to a lot of people who are listening to us today. But one thing that I'm going to touch on now that you also spoke about was skills. Now, I'm going to throw this to you, Elizabeth, in terms of skills. Now, with Cassava, you have put together quite a large smart technology company or institution, and that needs to be fed by the right sort of skills. And because of the newness of the digital economy, perhaps the skills are not readily available. We have a lot of people here who've come out of school. Perhaps I have a psychology degree or a sociology degree, or perhaps, we're thinking about the future generation. What are you doing at Cassava in terms of skills to feed into the digital economy?
Thank you. So for those of you who don't know Cassava, I come from a philanthropic and entrepreneurial family, and my father started one of the first mobile telephone companies in my home country, Zimbabwe, Econet Wireless. And as the MNO began to develop and grow, we know that businesses get, to a quite established growth phase. The next step for us was to continue to innovate. And so we started EcoCash, which is our mobile money platform. And it carries majority of the country's financial transactions. It's the second largest fintech company in Africa after M-Pesa. And so as we began to innovate and grow, we began to come up with other ways in which we could use mobile technology to be able to provide services to our users. We came up with products in insurance, in education, in e-commerce, and our smart tech products grew to the point where we were able to spin off that part from our MNO, and that is when we went to IPO as Cassava Smart Tech. And Cassava has grown to become almost as large as our MNO. So a company that took about 20 years to grow, our smart tech company is almost the same size, which is a massive success for us. And we project that Cassava is going to be larger than Econet probably in the next 5 to 10 years. So it really shows you how there is a massive opportunity for technology to provide basic services. I mean, if we think about finance, for example, when we look at countries like the US, when we look at Europe, the bank branch was the innovation in finance. Now imagine if we have to build a branch in every city, in every rural community, it is going to take us hundreds of years. And one of the things that Africans need to remember is that we are a young continent. So sometimes there is an expectation for us to look like some of the developed countries that we admire, but we are just starting out. But technology has given us that opportunity to leapfrog and catch up in a much shorter period of time. And so we also have our foundation, the Higher Life Foundation. Now, the reason I'm telling you all these different parts is so that I can tell you what we've done. Because a lot of times young people have innovative ideas, but sometimes we don't have the skills to make it happen. In a session that I spoke at yesterday, we highlighted that there are two things that haven't changed in the last century. A century is 100 years, remember, and that is prisons and schools. And so the reality is our schools don't prepare us for some of these things that we're talking about. They often don't enable us with the 21st century skills we need to create these web applications and to even use them. And so through our foundation, we have managed to come up with a few products to help young people. We've come up with a digital learning platform to give children access to learning materials, extra lessons, because of some of the challenges faced in that age group. And then through our company, Cassava, we have a hub, a coding school, where you can learn to make web applications, all for the purpose of allowing you as young people to create livelihoods for yourselves. If we give you these opportunities and we create products and services that link you to other job opportunities, then that is how you're able to employ yourself and employ others as well. So through Cassava, we built a platform called Tech Nights. And so with Tech Nights, if you're a coder, even if you're a plumber, a writer, anyone who has a project that they need those kinds of skills, they can go on Tech Nights, you go on Tech Nights, we pair you together, you make money, they get their services, and we're all happy. And if I can just highlight that we came up with these solutions out of what I think is called, what I believe in, which is design thinking. In design thinking, your main purpose is to look at the end user. That's all you care about. And so when I talk about what we've done through our foundation, what we've done through Cassava, all we had was the young person and the user in mind. And I emphasize young person because I have to keep in mind that that is the majority of our population. And I know that's who I'm talking to today. But we've created these products for people like me and for people like you so that we can have these kinds of opportunities. And the next thing I'll mention, I started my first tech startup when I was about 23 years old. So I know the struggles that young people often face. Struggles of investment, struggles of skills. And one of the things that I always say to young people is, a lot of times we come up with these products and we meet these incredible people like the gentleman I'm sitting next to. And sometimes our products are not viable and they're not investable. I used to work for UNICEF's Innovation Fund. And one of the things that was really difficult was to find projects to invest in that really meet a lot of the criteria that any investor would look at. So some of these things that we talk about when we talk about tech hubs, when we talk about skills that you need, it is to enable you with the right skills, to enable you with the right networks, so that when you get these opportunities for funding, you're ready. Philanthropy allows us to be able to make these investments without expecting a massive return. And then the company is able to find economic opportunities to extend these opportunities not just to young people, but to the African population as a whole.
Thank you for that. Absolutely. I think that's extremely powerful. And there are two things that you spoke about which are primarily important. When you touched on skills in terms of how people can be fundable. So you then brought in skills and funding. And I'm sure all of us here want to know how our best ideas can get the right funding for them to grow. Am I right? Absolutely. So I'll throw this to you, Mr. Koneng. What Elizabeth has talked about is basically within a Zimbabwean context in terms of what they've done and within the countries in which they operate. Now, how do we scale this learning to an African context so that the learnings that we've had perhaps from Cassava can now be available to someone in Congo-Brazzaville or in Cote d'Ivoire?
Yeah, thank you very much. The purpose of Smart Africa, the way we actually proceeded with our strategy and the vision is that every single country has a flagship project. Each flagship project constitutes an element of a piece of the puzzle of the entire digital transformation. For example, as we all know here, Rwanda is conducting the Smart City. Smart City is the flagship project for Rwanda. Kenya is the digital economy. Niger is the smart villages. Cote d'Ivoire is the cybersecurity. And we have Burkina Faso is capacity building and so on and so forth. And Tunisia, finally, is Startup Act. I just came back a couple of weeks ago from Africa Up, which is the summit, Africa Summit for the Youth, for the startup in Tunisia. Why? Because Tunisia is leading the flagship project for startup. What they succeeded in doing, it is to come up with a legislation called Startup Act. It means every single young person who's a startup will have a right to have a label called Startup Label. That will allow you to get exoneration for about 2 to 3 years, will pay you a salary for up to 3 directors for 2 years, and you will be entitled also to compete a percentage of government projects so that you can actually be on your feet and start, you crawl, you start walking, and you start running. And so, why we act that way? Because with the flagship project together, it is a lot of best practice learning. Then we take that, actually we personalize it per country, and we go to our country members, lesson learned, we implement it in a different way, but with the same foundation. That's how we actually will propagate the way learning. If the skill, like a capacity building, upskilling, and so on, or self-skilling, and so on and so forth, if we have a flagship project, we turn to a blueprint. The blueprint will be taken and actually thought in other countries so that other countries can learn. So together, there is a scale, economic of scale behind. Because if you were to go to every single country, start from scratch on the scaling or any other technology, blockchain, artificial intelligence, so on and so forth, not only it will cost money, it will cost time. But we all know, as the chairman said a couple of days ago, if you want to walk fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, we walk together. In Smart Africa, we are walking together because we want to go far.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Mr. Kone. And definitely, we walk together because the idea is to go as far as we possibly can. Now, Veron, I'm going to ask you this because I know you run a hub in the Congo. What are you doing in terms of providing skills and also assisting the people in your hub in terms of financing and funding? Because I think those are two very critical questions that people would want to know.
En fait, l'histoire du hub que nous avons lancé au Congo est un peu liée avec ma propre histoire. À l'époque, quand nous avons lancé les produits que vous avez cités, un peu quand on nous recevait un peu partout, partout où nous on partait, j'étais souvent le seul qui représentait les startups du Congo. Et pourtant, je savais bien qu'au Congo, il y a des jeunes qui travaillent, qui ont beaucoup d'idées et qui voulaient eux aussi voir leurs entreprises émerger, mais manquaient de lumière. Donc nous avons décidé de créer un incubateur, en fait, pour accompagner ces jeunes, pour les permettre de briller. Cette expérience a été très utile pour nous parce qu'en fait, on s'est rendu compte que, comme l'a dit le doyen, les jeunes veulent aller vite. Et quand un jeune veut un projet, généralement, ce qu'il fait, c'est qu'il se lance tout seul, il avance tout seul, il se casse la tête tout seul. Alors que le but, ce n'est pas d'aller vite, c'est d'aller loin. Et pour aller loin, généralement, là, je rebondis d'abord sur les questions qui concernent l'éducation et la formation. Pour aller loin, vous savez, aux États-Unis, dans la Silicon Valley, on dit que pour qu'une start-up réussisse, il faut 3 profils. Il faut ce qu'on appelle un hipster, il faut ce qu'on appelle un hacker et ce qu'on appelle un hustler. C'est la loi des 3 H. Le hipster, on va dire, c'est celui qui conçoit le produit, qui développe, comment dire, l'interface, qui rend le produit utilisable. Le hacker, c'est celui qui développe la solution technologique derrière, celui qui programme la solution pour que tout marche. Et le hustler, c'est celui qui prend tous ces deux-là et on fait un package et réussit à vendre les services de l'entreprise. Ces 3 profils, c'est souvent ce qui manque aux start-up. Et c'était notre grande difficulté parce qu'on s'était dit, vous créez un espace, vous mettez des jeunes, ils vont créer des start-up. Mais en fait, ils n'avaient pas ces profils-là, ce qui faisait que la majorité des start-up émergent peu. Et dans nos continents, la majorité des start-up émergent peu parce qu'une start-up avec une seule personne qui est parfois seulement un hipster, il lui manque un programmeur, il lui manque un hacker. Ou ils ont le hacker, ils sont 2, mais il leur manque, il y a donc le hipster et le hacker, il leur manque le hustler. Et malheureusement, il y a du mal dans nos pays de trouver tous ces 3 profils ensemble. Et quand on a réussi enfin à le faire, le plus grand problème des startups en Afrique, c'est comment trouver le financement. Vous savez, on dit que l'argent, c'est le nerf de la guerre. Et concernant les startups, c'est encore plus difficile parce qu'en Afrique, quand vous êtes jeune, vous allez dans une banque pour chercher à lever les fonds. Vous avez, je pense, toutes les chances de rater parce que la banque ne fait pas confiance aux jeunes. Et surtout, si vous n'avez pas un parent qui a un bon patrimoine, il ne faut pas y penser. Moi, dans le cadre de notre projet, VMK à l'époque, nous avons réussi à lever les fonds auprès de l'État. C'est-à-dire que nous avons notre projet viable, nous sommes allés voir l'État, l'État nous a financé. Mais tout le monde ne peut pas passer par l'État, surtout que nos pays traversent des situations économiques difficiles. Et donc, la seule solution que moi je propose aux jeunes, pour la plupart du temps, c'est de love money. C'est-à-dire que lever l'argent autour de soi, autour de nos familles. Parce que si vous êtes assez sûr de votre projet, si vous êtes un bon hustler, commencez par le vendre autour de vous. Et ce sont les petits fonds que vous allez trouver avec les résultats que vous aurez sur le terrain vont permettre d'attirer des gens qui sont capables de vous apporter plus de moyens. Vous savez, le plus important quand on est une start-up ou quand on est jeune, c'est l'environnement. Quand on a un environnement qui est économiquement viable, qui a il se passe beaucoup de choses dans l'environnement, il est très facile pour les jeunes de lever les fonds. C'est un peu le cas du Rwanda où à chaque fois que je viens ici, je vois que les start-upers, les jeunes, ils avancent. Je suis tout le temps au Kailab et je vois ce qui se passe. Mais tous les pays n'ont pas la chance d'être le Rwanda. Tous les pays n'ont pas la chance d'avoir l'environnement du Rwanda. C'est là où je l'ai dit, le premier commercial de votre start-up, c'est vous. Vendez autour de vous et ça va permettre d'attirer les gens. C'est difficile. Pour d'autres, c'est pratiquement impossible. Mais quand on est entrepreneur, le mot impossible n'existe pas. Le mot difficulté n'existe pas. Il y a des obstacles, c'est vrai, mais on doit être capable de les sauter. Et les entrepreneurs qui réussissent, parce que dans le monde, il n'y a que deux types d'entrepreneurs. Ceux qui veulent réussir et ceux qui ont réussi. Et ceux qui veulent réussir, généralement, c'est ceux qui ne s'arrêtent jamais aux premiers obstacles. Le financement est un des obstacles, mais tout à l'heure, j'ai dit qu'il faut penser différemment. Et la réponse de cela, c'est de l'innovation. Quand on réfléchit, on a une réflexion innovante, forcément qu'on trouve le financement. Merci.
Thank you very much, Faron. I think you're right about innovative thinking. We need to think differently. We need to be thinking smarter and thinking a lot harder. But here's another question, and this one I'll throw to you, Alex. We're talking about finding African solutions to African problems. And when we talk about the digital economy, most people interact with the digital economy on devices. It could be a laptop, it could be a phone, it could be a tablet. But are we not just creating a new type of consumer who is going to interact with this digital economy on an American-made iPhone or a Korean-made Samsung or a Chinese-made Huawei? How can we turn this into a truly African solution?
I think that's some of the work that Veron, the likes of Veron and Marathons are doing now by making sure that they are creating avenues for making hardware in Africa. I think just this week we saw the launch of Marathons, which is 100% made in Rwanda, or 99% made in Rwanda. But that is a platform. So the devices are platforms. Now, I know this is a little bit controversial that we need to make hardware to make everything, but the value is mostly created on the soft part, in the software, the brain that runs the hardware, and that's the services as well. So when the problems that we are solving, that we want to solve, are pharma problems, okay, healthcare problems, and yes, we can make some gadgets for healthcare. Yes, we can make gadgets for farmers, but some of these just require a tweaking of the software, and then you have the phone. I've seen different innovators that have created plugs or accessories that you can add to the phone and adjust the camera, and then you can use it for skin disease detection, or you can use it for all sorts of cancer diagnosis. And these, I believe, are going to be the key things. Making sure that we understand the science that is running behind these things, the technologies. Because if we do not understand the science, then it won't matter how much we wish, how much we try. But beyond understanding the science, this also now goes into the part of production and value chains and the costs, and making that decision to buy or to build. Okay, hardware business is hard. That's why they call it hard. Okay, so and yes, software is not that it's soft, but it's doable. And I believe that it's the cost of entry is way lower, and for young people that are in this audience and all over the continent, they can sit somewhere in their bedrooms with a laptop and code something that is going to change, the continent completely. So for me, I think there's where a lot of potential, and that's where we need to garner all efforts, okay? So the people that have resources, for example, friends Veron and Thaka that can invest in the hardware components, let them do that. I've seen young people. I work with young people every day on a daily basis. We're designing PCBs in Fab Lab, and they're sending these designs to China for mass production. And they're coming and supplying to the retailers in the city, okay? So to tell me that they do not, or it's so complicated, electronics is complicated and it cannot be done by Africans, that's not possible. That's out of the question. But how do we create those opportunities is the main question. How do we bring in resources, all sorts of resources, whether it's development partners that help de-risk the impact investors or the investors that are looking for a return on the money. So we need to pull all these resources, and I think sometimes we get carried away by just focusing on one part, but it needs some interplay of the entire ecosystem for us to be able to solve this problem.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Alex. And I think you brought in coding. I'm just interested to see how many of us in the audience are coders, if you can just show by raise of hand. And so I think these are people geared in the sort of thinking that you're talking about. But here's a question related to that, and I'll throw it to Elizabeth here. It talks to skills and and competitiveness mainly. Now, when you take a look at the standard economy, we had the minerals, so we had, in some ways, an advantage. We had it, they didn't. Now, are we not moving away from an economy where we have a distinct advantage to an economy where it becomes more conceptual, more skills, more coding, where we now have to openly compete with the rest of the world without a distinct advantage? Are we moving into that? Do we have a chance?
Well, I wouldn't say that we're moving into a world where things are more conceptual. I think that there's a general misconception that Africans don't have ET, Harvard. I know through our foundation, we have, on any given year, we have about 380 students studying in the United States on full scholarships that we are not funding. And that is because there's such smart and brilliant and skilled young people. And, you know, a lot of them are headhunted by companies like Google, but they want to come back to the continent because they see the opportunities in creating products for their own people that are tailored to them. I'll give you a small example. If you look at some of the reading books, some of you might be parents, some of you might be siblings. Think of some of the reading books that you read to maybe your 3-year-old, right? So you'll be reading a story about Paddington the bear, or whoever, so-and-so the bear went and took a train to the city. And you're sitting in a city where a train is not something that exists. Now, you haven't even told your 3-year-old that the thing that goes woof woof is a dog, and now you're expecting them to conceptualize something that's going choo choo choo. Basically, a lot of the things that we use, they didn't have our context in mind. It is so critical to create products that have our context in mind. So, thank you. And so when we look at technology, there are so many things out there that we can use, and we love to use those products. But let's not forget this continent. Let's not forget ourselves. And so we have an opportunity to do both. There are so many of us. When we said coding, I think about a third of the room put their hands up. What are the rest of you in? There's people who are interested in mining. We've got artists in the room. There is an opportunity for all of us. And the last thing I'll sort of mention along the same topic is, when we look at a web application, developers, I'm not a developer, you guys get way too much credit. There was a graphic designer who made that app look pretty. There was an artist who came up with the color scheme. There were so many skills that were involved in that particular process. And so each and every one of us matter. I look at just Sasai. We have a song. I mean, isn't that cool? Sasai, There's a singer there, there's a guitar, there's a drummer. Every skill that Africans have, it matters. So when we talk about technology, we talk about the digital economy, we talk about mobile money. There are so many skills and talented people that are essential to make that happen. And I think it really drives down to show us how the digital economy creates opportunities for so many people, not just the user and not just the app itself.
Thank you so much. I love that because it means, there's space in this world for the artist, for the singer, for the poet, within that digital economy frame. I think that's extremely powerful. Now, I'm sure most of us watched a documentary called The Great Hack, which probably scared most of us when we were told about a company called Cambridge Analytica that was using people's data to change behavior across multiple countries. They talked about it in terms of voting and things of that nature, and it brings a lot of scary things about what's happening to your data. Now, Mr. Kone, I want to find out, within the frame of any new industry, there are risks and dangers. Are we ready for the risks and dangers that are coming with this digital economy?
Thank you very much. Yes, there are risks and dangers. To be very bold, it's young people, they need to be aware of what is happening around them. Technology is good, but technology can also be bad, can be misused against our own people. As I said to you, every single morning you wake up, the first thing you know, before it used to be, I check my cell phone to say who called me. Then it was, I check my SMS, who sent me a message. Then it was, I check my WhatsApp, who sent me a picture or video. Then it was, let me check my Instagram. Then it was, let me check my Facebook, who liked me. And some people, everywhere they go, they said, I checked into this location. It's good. You are informing your community. But have you ever asked yourself where your data is going? I will be bold here, every single youth in this room, the GAFAM are making $16 per your head per year. Are they sharing the revenue with you? No. How are they making that? Because they know exactly what you do on a daily basis. And they process it, they repackage it. People who are selling online, you only need to go to Google or Facebook to say, I am targeting this age group, I'm targeting this gender, I'm targeting this country, and they will target your product to these people. How do they know it? You left your footprint. So that's how the data can be used exactly, can be misused. Sometimes even they can turn the young people against the government. It's absolutely true. That's the reason, unless Africa came out with the GDPR, which is a General Data Protection Regulation, like Europe, like America, for our own continent, there is still a risk out there. Because what is the GDPR? It is basically to say the African continent, we are ready to exchange information with other continents under certain rules, under certain regulation. A very simple example, to put it very simple way, as you're explaining to a 12-year-old boy, if you are in Europe, have you ever realized when you go to a website, there's always a consent page that will come to the bottom to say accept yes or no? That is it. Go to any African country and browse the website. It's the highway. It is the highway. That's what we call General Data Protection Regulation. It's only by doing that. But what are we trying to say? We're not trying to exclude ourselves. We are trying to regulate and organize and structure ourselves in a good manner. Why? It is important to know, look at the way the social media is open. I think about 3 months ago, something happened in New Zealand. People will do a live feed. Germany and England came out with a rule to tell the Facebook if there is a misconduct on the social media, you have 24 hours to take it down. Facebook is 3 billion users. how are they going to monitor and police that? So this is how you have to know it will not be sustained and is not sustainable. Very simple example. China did not wait for Facebook to be successful. There's no Facebook in China. There's a QQ and there's a WeChat, right? And they are living. China is 1.5 billion population. Africa is 1.2, 1.3 billion population. Same brain, but younger. So why we can't be like China or even better than China? That is the point. It means that our life should not be depending on the social media, because one of my colleagues was saying we can create, I know in this room here, 10, 15 years down the road, there are billionaires sitting in this room. Because young people, they think different than us, completely different. I came from a generation where when you get into the car, it was still manual. Who remember that still? And I came from a generation where we used to have a tape to play music, you put the pen in, you roll it. Who remember that? Then what happened to those tapes? What happened to the VCRs? What happened to CDs? Even what happened to Blu-rays? What happened to people who were selling CDs on the street? What happened? We just downloaded free. It's just different. It is different. Nobody is better than us. I'm not saying we are better than others. I'm saying we have a brain to think. So social media is good. There are risks. There are also advantages. Everyone in this life has a right for an agenda. Let's have, we African, our own agenda, which is to take this continent to the next level.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Kone, for that. Now, I'm told that our time is ticking, so I'm going to ask each of you just to give us a word of inspiration for the young people. But before I go there, I'm told we have a 2-minute special intervention from Mr. Francis James from UNDP Gabon. Just 2 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, and bon après-midi, mes amis. Mwiriwe mwesa. Mwiriwe mesa. Good afternoon, everyone. What a pleasure. What a great, I'm sorry, this is hands down the best. I'm surprised this place isn't packed, because this is the most important session of the past 3 days. I mean, I'm excited. So, applaudissements, tout le monde. Applaudissements pour les présentations. So I just want to make 3 small interventions, and I really want to just pose three questions. And my first question is, and I think we alluded to already on the smartphone level. Everyone has a smartphone here. I take it everyone has a smartphone. Flip it around. What's on the back? What's on the back of your cell phone? Huawei, Apple, Samsung, GTE, something, Android. Okay, great. But as was mentioned before, there's a new product in town. It's made in Africa, Mara phones. I just went over. Have you been? Launched this week. I just went last night after the Kigali night run. I ran in there and I said, show me what is this. Tell me this is a good product. I want to buy it. 2 products, Mara X, Mara Z. $130. $190. Okay? How many people came to this session here? How many people is in Youth Connect? There was 10,000 people. Let's do the math. Do the math, people. Do the math. 10,000 people. 10,000 young Africans. Times 130. Quick, what is that? $1.3 million. Yeah? $1.9 million. $1 to $2 million in this room. Built where? Special Economic Zone, Rwanda. How many employees are working on it? 200. Currently, 200 people working in there. Capacity for 600, 650. Export potential over 1 million phones. I'm sorry. I love my Samsung. This is great. But you know what? I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this because I'm African, and I want to, what have we talked about? Made in Africa. And I want to support Africa. It's not just the hardware, the software, it's the jobs, it's the expertise, it's the investment. So we spoke about hardware, software, platforms. My second question is, how many of you are on Twitter? How many of you are on Instagram? How many of you are on Facebook? How many of you are on Weibo, WeChat? How many of you are on Sasai? How many of you out there are app developers? How many of you are coding? 1/3 of you are coding? I'm sorry, that's not good enough. Everyone should be coding. This is the future. This is how you're gonna, this is the way of the future. So my hope next year, 10,000 people, 50% are using Mara phones. Next year, 10,000 people, not 30%, 50%, 60% are coding, are hacking, are hustling. Last question. What do you wish for? What do you wish for? Young, youth, Africans. Yesterday, Ahuna Ezeakona, the UNDP director, talked about young people, about platforms, about products. The head of UNFPA spoke about education, entrepreneurship, empowerment. Panelists here talked about Made in Africa, Voice of Africa, Data for Africa, a platform for Africa, how to connect, how to innovate, how to transform. Who are the hipsters out there? Who are the hustlers? Who are the hackers out there? They're all in here. There's millionaires here. There's billionaires in here. Find your voice. Tell us who you are. Thank you.
A round of applause, please. Thank you so much. No, thank you. I think that's absolutely inspirational. And please, go buy your microphones and download Sasai. Now, we're about to close. So what I'm just going to ask is, Veron, you talked about hipsters, hustlers, hackers. I think that's going to stick for a lot of people here. We should make it a hashtag and, you know, we make some money. But in 1 minute, inspire the audience here and the audience watching us from all over the world in 1 minute.
Ok. Je vais vous raconter une histoire. Il y a plus de 30 ans de cela, deux jeunes, ils n'avaient pas 30 ans, à l'époque où il n'y avait pas Internet, à l'époque où les ordinateurs avaient la taille de cette salle, à l'époque où le marché n'existait pas. Ils ont décidé que leur travail à eux serait de concevoir des logiciels. Le marché n'était pas là. Aujourd'hui, un d'eux est toujours vivant, il s'appelle Bill Gates. Son entreprise vaut plus de 1000 milliards de dollars. Quelques kilomètres de là, il y avait encore deux jeunes qui n'étaient même pas diplômés comme les deux premiers, qui, eux, voulaient changer la manière dont on accédait à l'outil informatique. Ils ont créé des ordinateurs. La société s'appelle Apple. Aujourd'hui, elle vaut plus de 1000 milliards. Quelques années après eux, deux autres jeunes sortis d'université ont décidé qu'ils devaient changer la manière dont on avait accès à l'information. Ils ont créé un moteur de recherche. À l'époque où l'Internet n'était qu'à ses promesses. Aujourd'hui, cette entreprise vaut plus de 1000 milliards. Quelques années après eux, un jeune dans une université qui voulait juste avoir une petite amie a créé un réseau social qui aujourd'hui est devenu une entreprise qui vaut des centaines de milliards. Ces jeunes, avec vous, il y a quelque chose que nous avons tous en commun. On a le même cerveau. Leur cerveau n'est pas plus grand, n'a pas plus le gigaoctet. Moi, j'ai souvent dit que l'Afrique, numériquement d'aujourd'hui, c'est un peu comme les États-Unis de l'époque de Bill Gates ou de l'époque de Sergey Brin. Nous avons un marché exceptionnel. Le seul marché où il y a encore de la croissance à se faire au monde, c'est l'Afrique. Dites-moi, qu'est-ce qui vous empêche à vous jeunes de créer l'entreprise qui, dans 10 ans, qui dans 20 ans, dans 30 ans, vaudra 1000 milliards. Rien, si ce n'est que la volonté. Si ce n'est que la volonté. Et la volonté fait tout. Moi, j'ai appris qu'avec la volonté, on peut déplacer des montagnes. Moi, j'ai appris qu'avec la volonté, on pouvait traverser des mers. On a construit des ponts. Ceux qui sont allés en Chine ont vu un pont le plus long au monde. C'est juste avec la volonté. Avec la volonté, un homme a dit, nous, on va construire des hôtels. Les banquiers leur ont dit qu'il n'y aurait pas il n'y a pas de marché. Mais aujourd'hui, le Rwanda peut recevoir 10 000 personnes et ils sont installés. C'est la volonté qui fait tout. La volonté et un peu de passion. Si Bill a pu le faire, si Paul Kagame a pu le faire, si Steve Jobs a pu le faire, je ne vois pas pourquoi vous ne le ferez pas. Épatez-nous, impressionnez-nous, donnons-nous rendez-vous dans 20 ans et s'il vous plaît, soyons milliardaires.
Thank you, Veron. I think that's very, very powerful, and thank you for that. Alex, you have 1 minute. Let's inspire the audience.
I think when I look at the audience, I see, yes, young people who are young at face and in age. And then we have young people who are young at heart. So I'll speak to both of them. So to the young people of Africa, you have it inside you. You have what it takes to change your world and to change the world around you. But you are stronger together. You're stronger with a team or within a team. So let's build teams, find people that think like you, that work like you, but also those that don't think like you. Because you need to, once in a while, to check and to cross-check some of the ideas, not just have people that are followers. To the parents that are here, some of you have younger children. The digital economy is not going to wait for them to get old. So start exposing them as early as possible. There's a fear that they will get addicted. There are remedies to all this. But if we don't engage them at an early age, then we lose them at the older age. And to the development partners and government partners, philanthropists like the person on my left, we need your resources to de-risk the projects that these young people have so that they can become investable. Private money will only flow into these young people's projects if the private money believes that it is being de-risked. We can sit here and sing and talk about funding, but we need that DFI money that you sometimes put in studies, in feasibility. There's no better feasibility than getting hands dirty and getting some experiments. So let's get that money. Governments, tenders, all this, let's give chances to young people. There's a Startup Act that the Smart Africa has championed through Tunisia. If governments, African governments can adopt that, that would take a long way in actualizing most of what we're talking about today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. Now, Elizabeth, you're young, and thus far you have done incredible things. Let's inspire this audience.
So when I was 11 years old, I sort of borrowed my mom's high heels and decided I was going to go to work because I was not going to wait until I was 40 to have a nice job. I'm not saying that that worked and that was successful, but I'm now, the youngest director of a publicly listed company in Zimbabwe and probably in many of the African countries that we have. And I think that, when we hear some of these issues like xenophobia and all that stuff, my father always reminds me, every generation has its own fight. And 1/3 of us are unemployed. Another third of us are vulnerably employed. And 1 in 6 of us is wage employed. 1 in 6 of us is earning an income. That is the fight of this generation, and we have to rise up to the challenge. We were called here to this conference. About 2,000 of us came from outside of the country, and we have ministers, we have heads of state that came here. They did not come here to sit and watch panels. They came here for us, and we have a responsibility to change that statistic in the next few years. And so we cannot afford to be complacent. We can't afford to fold our arms. I would urge everyone else who is young, who is vibrant here today, let us gather at Youth Connect 2020, having shown the world that Africans are different, Africans are smart, and Africa is the future of the world. Thank you.
That's powerful, absolutely powerful words, absolutely powerful. Now, Lassina, I think just to close, a last inspiration to our esteemed audience and everyone watching across the globe.
I have a dream in one day when each African country will not be judged by the amount of natural resources they have, but rather by the data it will be structured. I have a dream which each single young people in Africa will not be judged by how he looks, but how intellectual he can be. And I have a dream that one day we will be exporting people like Steve Jobs, like Mark Zuckerberg, like Michael Dell, and we do not have to be exporting our natural resources, but rather we will be exporting our knowledge. It's only if that time comes then Africa will be really striving and leapfrogging other nations, because we are actually rising to hold our responsibility in our own hands. Thank you.
Now that is powerful. That is powerful. Now, as we close, my challenge to you is that this is Youth Connect, and as Elizabeth said, we didn't come here just to talk. We're here to seek opportunities and to do something with them. So my challenge with each of you is to connect. We've got coders here, work together. We've got engineers here, work together. But my challenge to the people like the panelists we have here, or the ministers who sit in front rows, is that when the young people here connect with you, you respond, so that they know that you're there for them. So this has been an amazing panel, and thank you. You've been an amazing audience. The next session is going to be Face the Gorillas, and I know you'll entirely love it. I say thank you to each of the panelists. You've been amazing. Thank you, and have a good afternoon.
Another round of applause for the panelists. They did quite well informing us on how to go about digital economy and our role as the youth. Now, if you may allow me, we're going into another interesting session where we'll be having pitching, different young people pitch, and the rewards are up to $200,000 US. Isn't that interesting? I just loved one of the things that I picked from this panel was that, you know what, people here, the young people that are here, we have the next billionaires. Are you guys excited for that? And who knows, you know, maybe $200,000 US might be a good start to become a billionaire. But of course, US dollars, right? Are we together? Let's not convert that into African currencies. We might end up being billionaires with a few US dollars. Now, help me do one small exercise. May you all rise if you may. Please rise up. Does it feel good to stand up a little bit? Yeah? Right. Please stretch a little bit, you know, move side to side. If you happen to bump into someone, just greet them and tell them, you know what, good afternoon, and you look good. Right. Thank you.
Now I understand how much you guys missed each other, even though you're sitting next to each other. It's quite interesting. Please have your seats. We're now transitioning into Youth Connect Africa Awards and Face the Gorillas. Now, I'll not talk much about this, but Face the Gorillas has been sponsored by OIF, Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, or the International Organization of French-speaking countries. And basically, I won't say more, but I would like to invite Angela Hamsi. She's an investor, but also a member of Young Presidents Organization and the co-founder of Ignite, and so many, many, many titles that we don't want to go through. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for Angela Hamsi to take us through this next section.